समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Remember Pahalgam? Something happened there just about a year back, and just last month we were observing the first anniversary of Op Sindoor and also looking back at Pahalgam. This is a good time also to see what is so far probably the best reconstruction of what happened at Pahalgam and who were the people who carried out the attack and who were their handlers. Now there are many questions here, and some of these questions are being answered through the charge sheet that NIA has filed in this case. NIA filed its charge sheet in December last year. NIA took over this case on 27th of April last year, 5 days after the massacre on the 22nd. After that, investigation went on. Court, in case of the NIA court, under UAPA, the court does not have to take cognizance. That formal process is not there. It is presumed to be taken cognizance of, and the trial sort of started. But NIA court trials are not public. That means you and I cannot go and witness them as you might do with other criminal trials. However, around time of the anniversary of Op Sindoor, some parts of the charge sheet leaked, and then in the course of time, the charge sheet became public. This is this 122-page charge sheet with a lot of graphics and pictures. Also, a list of annexures, which is not with me. If you added the list of annexures and other things and seizure memos, then it will become about this thick. That is not relevant right now because wisdom, quote unquote, from all of that is drawn in this charge sheet. The charge sheet has been signed by Sandeep Chaudhary, who's an IPS officer of 2012 batch and has had long service in Jammu and Kashmir. He's been SSP at Shopian, Srinagar, and is currently DIG at NIA. Is much decorated with 9 gallantry awards. So NIA also put their best on this chart. Now, what are the questions that will come to our mind if we read this charge sheet? Because this charge sheet is also Government of India's claim sheet in terms of the 3 people who were killed in the Dachigam encounter on 28th of July 2025, that these were the real people involved in the Baisaran massacre. This happened, mind you, on the day Parliament opened. So there was a lot of questioning of the timing, that, oh, look, this is so perfectly timed, this can't be true. And allied questions. So let me first list the questions for you. And these are 10 questions. Question number 1, how do we know if the 3 killed in Dachigram encounter on 28th of July 2025 are the same people who carried out the Baisaran or Pahalgam massacre? The 3 people, as they've been identified, are Faisal Jatt alias Suleiman. Each one has multiple aliases. Habib Tahir alias Chotu alias Jibran Bhai alias blah blah blah, and Hamza Afghani. These 3 have been identified by these names. How NIA has done it, we'll tell you as we go along. That's question number 1. How do we know that these were the same people? Second, how do we know that they are Pakistani? They could be from anywhere, because there is nothing on a dead person's body that tells you if the person is Pakistani or not. And obviously these guys were not carrying their passport. So how do we know they're Pakistani? And how do we believe the NIA's claim that these were Pakistani? Number 3, they've been linked in the NIA charge sheet. They've been linked to multiple attacks over the past 2 years. And some of those attacks we've spoken about, at least 2 sets of attacks we featured in earlier episodes of Karta Klatter. And those attacks were taking place in south of Pir Panjal, that is in the region from the line of control. You come into from line of control, you infiltrate to the Indian side, then you come into the Surankot forest in Poonch area, and then climb up the Pir Panjal range and then come down into the valley. And now a series of terror attacks have taken place in that region between mid 2023 until the end of 2024. And then a couple in Kashmir Valley as well, all of which NIA has said one of these three in those cases was also involved, which means the same module was involved in all of those cases. So how did the NIA know this and what is the evidence? That is our third question. Fourth, how do we know that this operation or these operations were actually controlled from Pakistan, which is the NIA's allegation or charge in this charge sheet? Number 5, what's the evidence that Baisaran indeed was the target of these three? Number 6, what exactly happened in Baisaran that day, those few minutes when these killings took place? Number 7, what kind of digital evidence helped the NIA in cracking this case? Number 8, TRF made a claim within 2.5 hours that they were responsible for this attack, these killings, and then they withdrew that claim 3 days later, saying that their site or their handles had been penetrated or infiltrated or compromised by Indian intelligence, and Indian intelligence had subverted them by issuing this claim in their name. So 3 days later, they withdrew it. How does the NIA then establish that it was indeed the TRF that carried out this operation? Question number 9, who are the local collaborators? Who are the local collaborators of these TRF killers? And what are they charged with? What are the charges against them? And number 10, did any local people also help NIA? Question number 9 is, did any local people help TRF or Lashkar-e-Taiba? Question number 10 is, did any local people help the NIA? Now we come to question number 1. And there, what usually would be called in a criminal case a smoking gun is actually burnt or spent cartridges. So when a bullet is fired, the empty shell falls there. In forensic science, that's very important because police can pick up the empty shell, match the characteristic markings, like a person's fingerprints. When a bullet goes out of the barrel of a gun or a weapon of any kind, then it leaves markings on the barrel, inside the barrel, and on the casing, and the two can be matched. So you can say so if you have access to a weapon and a cartridge, you can forensically match the markings to see if the cartridge had been fired from the same weapon or the same gun or not. This is a very important piece of evidence in any case of crime involving firearms. In this case, one particular weapon, a 5.56 mm carbine, was recovered from one of the 3 terrorists killed in the Dachigram encounter. Bullets were fired in the Dachigram encounter also from the same carbine. Those bullets or those casings and that carbine, the barrel, the markings inside, those match the casings of 5.56 mm fired from a carbine at Baisaran as well. So you know that the two were connected. Similarly, the ballistics have matched for one AK-47 rifle also that fires 7.62 mm bullets. Further, 2 prosecution witnesses who are also in fact charged in the case as collaborators. That is Bashir Ahmed Gothard and Parvez Ahmed, his nephew. Both are pony operators who are sort of semi-nomadic and live in a dhok. Dhok is like a temporary shelter that populations leading a nomadic existence set up for temporary shelter here and there. These two have also identified the 3 bodies as being those of the people involved in the massacre. Now, how do these two know the 3 people involved in the massacre? Because Bashir Ahmed Gothard and Parvez Ahmed are supposed to have given them refuge, the killers refuge, for about 5 hours and a meal in their homes, and also hidden their things. They are also alleged to have shown them the way to the Baisaran meadow. Now we come to question number 2. How do we know they are Pakistani, or how does the NIA know they are Pakistani? This has been done through digital forensics. Now, selfies and pictures of these 3 killed terrorists, these have been picked up from the mobile phones found on them. These are Xiaomi mobile phones. So NIA wrote to Xiaomi, and Xiaomi replied that these phones were sold in Pakistan in Lahore and Karachi to Lahore and Karachi addresses. Through those phones, the NIA also traced Facebook accounts in Rawalpindi announcing the deaths of these people with the same names, with the names that the NIA has put out. All that is part of the evidence. In particular, there were announcements about Habib Tahir alias Chotu in Rawalpindi and Bahawalpur as well. Then the NIA went backwards and checked the IP numbers of these phones. These were Pakistanis, and through these, they established that these Facebook accounts were Pakistani Facebook accounts, and then they further established that announcements were made and information was put out on Telegram channels, and those IP addresses also are registered in Pakistan. NIA also wrote to Facebook under relevant sections of BNSS, section 94 in fact of BNSS, and Facebook confirmed that these handles were operated by entities inside Pakistan, and also the administrative handlers of these platforms was on a mobile number and an IP registered in Pakistan. That is how the Pakistani connection has been established. Now, Sajid Jatt, the Pakistani who's not dead, who's alive, who's in Pakistan, he has one artificial leg. He's been identified by the NIA as the controller of this group. How does the NIA know more about him? In 2005-07, it seems he came to India and lived in Kulgam. He married a woman there. He produced a kid. In the course of time, he escaped from there with his wife, but left the kid behind. The man whose adopted daughter this woman was, he's become a protected witness for NIA. He's identified this man. He's also identified him from a 2017 meeting in Pakistan, and also through an identification parade of pictures. Since they were connected, we've gone over point 1, 2, and 4 first, and we jump backwards to point number 3 now. Point number 3 is they've been linked by NIA to multiple attacks over the past 2 years. How did NIA know? Because usually the tendency for the police is when they catch a thief, they say that thief carried out every theft in your city, right? So that way, police can also clean up their books and say we've solved 100 crimes instead of 1 crime. That's a normal practice among the police forces in our country. Now, given that, how do you then trust the NIA when it says that the same group was responsible for multiple attacks carried out over the previous 2 years? That also, your immediate response would be, that's a case of putting everything under one basket or putting everything in one trash can, particularly because these people are dead, and the others charged, say Lashkar-e-Taiba or TRF as organizations, or Sajid Jatt, who is living in Pakistan, who supposedly or allegedly the handler of this group, they are unlikely to be caught in India to be prosecuted. So it's a safe thing to say that we've killed these guys. They carried out the Baisaran massacre, and with this, we have resolved all the other cases that we were investigating. Now we look at that bit of evidence that NIA has put out in this charge sheet. The first one actually made headlines for multiple reasons. 21st December 2023, Dera Ki Gali near the village of Baflias. Remember, we had featured this incident in a full episode of Karta Clutter. Baflias is the village where Alexander's horse, his favorite horse, apparently died when he was in India and when he was withdrawing from India. This is not that far from River Jhelum. That's where he fought his battle with Porus on the banks of River Jhelum. He was going back, his horse died, and the horse is buried somewhere there. We had talked about it then in that episode of Karta Clutter. In this incident, 5 army soldiers were killed, 2 were injured. And in this case, the responsibility was claimed, or the quote-unquote credit was claimed by PAFF, People's Anti-Fascist Front, which is generally believed to be another name for Jaish-e-Mohammed, not Lashkar-e-Taiba. But who knows who claims what in these cases. This was a classical ambush because terrorists were on a mountaintop and they caught an army convoy or army vehicle as it was making a tight bend while in a climb. So it had to slow down a great deal, and that's when they carried out this ambush. After this, the same army unit carried out the search and counter operations. In that, a bunch of local civilians were picked up and they were tortured, and that's where chili powder was used. And those pictures became public, which caused a great deal of embarrassment. Court of inquiries were ordered. I believe people have been given various degrees of punishment over time. That was so disturbing that Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh went there the next day to reassure the people that Indian Army would not do such a thing again in future, and also generally to spread the message of discipline there. That's the reason I said this incident made bigger headlines for multiple reasons. This was one of those reasons. The NIA lists all of these cases and makes an important entry there. See that chart from the chart sheet on your screens. It mentions the weapons used, AK-47s or M4, two kinds of weapons. AK-47s are listed as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like that. Then you see which is common to what. In this attack, in Dera Ki Gali attack, A, B, C, D, G, H, these 5 rifles, AK-47 rifles were involved. Then you come to the second attack, 4th of May 2024. This is again in the general Surankot area in the Punch region at village Shashetar. This is where, if you would remember, an Air Force vehicle was ambushed. Again, 1 Air Force man was killed, 4 were injured. In this case, the rifles involved were B and C, which is common to the first incident, and the M4 carbine made its appearance in this case. How does the NIA know? Because in each case, empty casings of bullets fired have been picked up, and those are being matched. Then the next incident comes about a month later, 9th of June 24, in Riyasi in the Jammu region. You might remember this was a bus of pilgrims. This bus was carrying pilgrims from the temple of Shiv Khori. From the temple of Shiv Khori, and the terrorists fired at it. Providentially, as the driver got hit, he was the first to get hit. 8 others were killed, but because the driver got hit, the bus rolled into a khud. And bus went deep down, as a result of which 41 other passengers got injured. But probably because the bus rolled down into a khud, more were not killed by terrorists. Because this bus was completely unarmed, there was no police escort, nothing. Maybe the intention was to kill a very large number of people and to trigger an Indian response at that point. That response had to wait almost a year after this. Again, the weapons used in this one, see your list, AK-47s, AK-47A, that was identified in this one, and the same M4 carbine. Then 20th October 2024, again a well-known incident. I think we also spoke about it earlier. APCO is the contractor building the part of the Z-Mode tunnel leading up to Zojila tunnel, and then into Kargil and onto Ladakh. There was a terror attack killing 7 civilians, mostly engineers, workers of APCO, workers of the contractor APCO at a place called Gagangir in Kashmir Valley's Gandarbal district. There, the AK-47 identified as C and M4 carbine is still common there because those casings were found there. And now these bullet cases cannot be planted retrospectively because in each case these have been found, entries have been made, they've been sent for forensic examination. You cannot do this retrospectively. Just 4 days later, because obviously this group is moving in that area, just 4 days later, near Gulmarg, in a place called Bola Pathri, again, army vehicle has been ambushed. 2 army soldiers and 2 civil porters were killed. 3 others were injured. Their rifles, AK-47A and they have been identified. So in the Pahalgam attack, EF rifles AK-47 E and F and M4 have been identified. Now you see between these three, you can find commonness with all the earlier attacks. That is the evidence that the same group was involved, or at least one person from the same group was involved in each of the earlier attacks. Again, evidence for Pakistani connection is claimed through the testimony of protected witness number 3, who claims that he was abducted in September 2024 in Baramulla forest by 4 terrorists, Musa, Yasir and Faisal. Faisal involved with Baisaran, Faisal involved in APCO, Faisal involved in most of these attacks. Faisal is the same man with many aliases, and Junaid Bhatt, who was a local Kashmiri. Protected witness number 3, he was kidnapped by them to be used as a guide, and they went to a thick jungle area called Gogaldara jungle, where a drone dropped a yellow packet containing 20 pistols, rupees 15 lakh in cash, triangular looking bombs, and these had come on the instructions, he said, of Ali Bhai, which is an alias of Sajid Jatt. He claims, protected witness 3 claims, that when they were crossing a river and distracted, he managed to escape. Question number 5. What's the evidence that Baisaran was a target? The terrorists were using Alpine Quest app. See it on your screens. Alpine Quest is a commonly available app. You can also download it. Trekkers, mountaineers use it. In the Alpine Quest app, screenshots found on terrorists' phones, the exact location of Baisaran was shown, and these screenshots were sent on the dead terrorists' phones between April 15 and 16. That is just 6 days before the massacre. Then the NIA has also listed a picture of the Dhok, that is Parvez Ahmad's Dhok. Dhok is a temporary shelter. That is where Parvez Ahmad and his uncle, Bashir Ahmad Jothar, they gave shelter to the terrorists. Also Parvez Ahmad's wife Tahira, who was then nursing a 10-month-old child. I shall not mention his name because he must get anonymity. They cooked a meal for them, a modest meal of rotis and tomatoes, after eating which the terrorists decided to go out, do a reconnaissance, and they decided to hang out at a little place called Marzugaur outside the Baisaran meadow. In fact, it's there that while escaping, they left burnt checked blankets and burnt tarpaulin sheet, which they had taken from these pony owners. The DNA of one of the pony owners has been matched with the DNA found on one of these sheets, confirming that these were taken from these two. Question number 6. What happened at Baisaran? At Baisaran, according to NIA's description, Faisal Jatt, he took a position on the eastern side. That's where the zip line ends. Remember those pictures of the tourist going down a zip line? That's where the zip line ends. He took a position there. The other two went near the dhabas on the other side. So Faisal Jatt fired first, and he was the one carrying the M4 carbine. The others then started firing from the other end. The NIA has also shared with us a diagram that they have made of where the casings have been found. And a very interesting fact is that a total of 38 casings have been found. 38 casings have been found, 26 killed, about 3 or 4 seriously injured with bullet injuries. That means it wasn't indiscriminate firing. That means it was almost one bullet, one man. The second thing is, NIA says that they identified people by asking them to read the kalma. But whoever could not read the kalma was killed. One of the protected witnesses who was there, who has described the scene, he says that I was able to recite the kalma, so I was let go and I escaped. What the NIA does not say, and that's very important, what the NIA does not say, although that became very much a part of popular belief and common belief, is that they told tourists to unzip to prove whether they were Muslims or not. That the NIA said did not happen. In any case, does not look like the terrorists had so much time there. They did not waste any time. They just saw a person and shot him. In fact, when they were escaping, the NIA says, they found 3 tourists hiding outside, cowering with fear, they also paused and shot each one of them as well. So 38 bullets, 26 killed, 3 or 4 injured. That is how this massacre was carried out. Question number 7 now. What kind of digital evidence helped NIA? The terrorists, while escaping, lost their camera. They had a camera on them that they dropped off on the side. There is no such thing as a perfect murder. Maybe in an Agatha Christie novel, but every terror attack, all terrorists, all criminals leave some evidence behind. So a GoPro Hero 12 Black camera was dropped by terrorists as they were escaping. That camera was picked up by NIA. They've given the serial number there, C3501325471706, whatever relevance that has for us. Metadata analysis of that camera and the footage from the phone camera recovered from the site of the Dachigram encounter. That confirmed that this GoPro camera was carried by these terrorists to the site, and this GoPro camera was also taking pictures of the attack. These pictures were recovered from the phones found on the dead terrorists in Dachigram encounter. As a matter of fact, I will share with you an exclusive story that our reporter Mayank Kumar had done on 2nd March this year, saying that the camera had been traced to a Chinese distributor and was activated in Dongguan in China on 30th January 2024. And metadata from this camera was also found on Junaid Bhatt's phone. Junaid Bhatt, I told you, was the lone Kashmiri terrorist who had allegedly taken this protected witness to the forest where the airdrop from the drone took place, and who was also involved in the APCO case. He was later killed in an encounter near Srinagar, and his phone had been found. Metadata analysis of his phone also matched this GoPro camera, which brings us to question number 8, that TRF first made the claim. 3 days later, they resiled from the claim. How does the NIA then insist that this was indeed the TRF? The NIA says that both the initial claim and the denial 3 days later were made from the same IP address based in Pakistan, and they've given the IP number also. There's no point my repeating it to you because these are just numbers. In any case, I will share the link of the entire charge sheet with you. You can read it and see it there. They also tracked 2 Telegram channel addresses, encrypted Telegram channel addresses, both operated by a Pakistani handle called Eagle Front, which also operates a bunch of handles for Sikh separatist organizations. Question number 9 then, who are the local collaborators of the terrorists and what are they charged with? That we've told you earlier. Parvez Ahmed and his uncle Bashir Ahmed Jothar, they've both been charged under UAPA, but the fact is that the charges on them have fairly light sentences, maximum of 3 years. They've already spent almost a year in prison already. The little twist there is that NIA says in the charge sheet that they don't believe that these two are telling them the full truth, and they wanted to subject them to lie detector and polygraph test, but the NIA court has not permitted that. Which brings us to the last question, question number 10. Did any local people also help the investigation? That is where we come to protected witnesses 1 to 4. There are 4 protected witnesses. India still does not have a Witness Protection Act, but a 2018 Supreme Court judgment said that if the prosecution decides to declare somebody a protected witness, that will hold until the government passes a law saying something else. So within the powers of that Supreme Court judgment, 4 witnesses have been given the protected witness status in this case. So all 4 can remain anonymous. Their identity will not be disclosed either in the court and definitely not to the media. One I told you was the Baisaran Park worker who said that when he was escaping, he was asked to recite the Kalma and he did. So he escaped. He also lived near the dhok of the uncle and the nephew who've been caught for collaborating with terrorists. And he says that he saw the 3 terrorists strolling near Baisaran before the attack. These are the 4 protected witnesses whose accounts I have given you as I have taken you through these questions, and these 4 remain anonymous. That is the law as it stands. And before I let you go, a small thing. In In the earlier episode of Cut the Clutter, when we talked about India's new projects on Chenab River, I forgot to mention one very important fact. I said to you that all the western rivers where most of the waters were allocated to Pakistan. Almost 97% of the waters were allocated to Pakistan. These add up to about 135 to 140 million acre feet. What about the three rivers that belong to India, whose water belongs fully to India? That is Satluj, Beas and Ravi. Those are relatively smaller rivers. So the total water in those three rivers is just about 34 to 36 million acre feet. Satluj is 14, the other two are about 11 each. So those are relatively smaller rivers, and the amount of water India was allocated in Indus Water Treaty was quite small. There are always questions about, was Nehru too generous with Pakistan on IWT? At least the BJP has also believed that. So we have to understand the context. The context from mid-50s until 1960, 61, I would say until about 62, early 62, was that Nehru was searching for peace with Pakistan, and he thought there was a real prospect of peace with Pakistan. Please note, for example, that in 1955, the chief guest on India's Republic Day was a Pakistani. That's Governor General of Pakistan, Malik Ghulam Muhammad. And 1960, Nehru was exploring the idea of a no-war pact with Pakistan. So it's possible, quite likely, that he was generous with Pakistan with Indus Water Treaty, thinking that this will help the cause of peace, or this will help normalize relations with Pakistan. As history tells us, that bet did not quite work out.